We started this week talking about Gilda, a movie whose cinematographer was Rudolf Mattei. Well, in today's video we're going to talk about instead one of the movies that he directed. And it is a relatively unknown movie starring William Holden, Nancy Olson, and Barry Fitzgerald called Union Station and released in 1950 that I also referenced in a video dedicated to William Holden.
Man sitting down, facing the first phone booth.
What about him?
He's one of them.
Scream your head off. You're Sunday and you're 40 feet underground. Go on and scream.
Kidnappers striking from the depths beneath the city. And the pulse-stirring story of the hunt for these jackals of the underworld is told in Paramount's Union Station, starring Bill Holden, Nancy Olson, and Barry Fitzgerald, with two exciting newcomers, Lyle Betger and Jan Sterling.
The chemistry between Nancy Olson and William Holden had been so great in Sunset Boulevard, a movie that I'm also hoping to cover this Noirvember, that Paramount Studios decided to pair them again instantly. In fact, Union Station was filmed almost immediately after Billy Wilder's masterpiece, and they do deliver together in this overlooked film noir. As I said before, although he is wonderful with Audrey Hepburn and Grace Kelly, I am quite partial to his pairings with Nancy Olson, and particularly Union Station is one of my favorites. And I feel Hollywood executives felt a lot like me because they would ultimately be paired 4 times. Aside from Sunset Boulevard and Union Station, next year in 1951 they would be filming 2 more movies called Submarine Command and Force of Arms. There is something about them together that for me speaks truth, and I love their dynamics, him being quite cynical and her being a no-nonsense kind of woman. I love the way they tease one another, and as I saw in one video in which Nancy Olson is interviewed by the Film Noir Foundation upon their meeting in Sunset Boulevard, and a brief pass made by Holden to Olson, which she wholesomely declined, Nancy and Bill became lifelong friends. And you can see much of that mutual affection and also, let's face it, attraction in all the movies they did together. As I write to, the part that William Holden plays in Union Station was previously offered to John Lund and Alan Ladd, who was at that time still a major star of Paramount Studios, but whose fame was starting to wane. Conversely, William Holden was on the rise. He had just filmed again Sunset Boulevard, and he felt that this new project was not up to the standards of Billy Wilder's masterpiece. And although this production is on a total different level than Sunset Boulevard, I'm really glad that he had to accept this part, because in my opinion, it is a fantastic movie. We must remember that he was an actor that struggled a lot gaining the parts he longed to play, because he was often being cast as the hunk who accompanies the female protagonist, especially when he came back from World War II. So he was again very wary, but that was not the case. 1950 was an extremely successful year for him because he would also appear in a movie that I particularly love called Born Yesterday, another film that he also thought he was only being cast again as the companion of Judy Holliday, but especially Sunset Boulevard and Born Yesterday were huge critical and public successes, so his career really took a giant leap after 1950. In this movie, Holden plays the part of Lieutenant William Calhoun, also known as Tough Willie, something that he is not so happy about, but that I find really funny. And he plays a cynical, skeptical policeman who's in charge of Chicago's Union Station. It is there where a smart, beautiful young woman, played by Nancy Olson, approaches him because she suspects that her boss's blind daughter Lorna has been kidnapped, and two of the men involved might still be at the station. Lieutenant Calhoun is at first quite skeptical again with her suspicions, but subsequent events prove that she is in fact correct and that the police must hurry up if they want to save Lorna. It is another movie that, quite like The Asphalt Jungle that we covered last week, has a relatively also skeptical view on police officers and law enforcement. It is in fact in more than one occasion that Nancy Olson's part is the one who makes possible for them to gain more information and get one of the accomplices, while the police seems to almost give up on the hopes that the girl would be alive. In the midst of all this not so friendly view of police methods, we have also Inspector Donnelly, played by Barry Fitzgerald, who is in most cases an affable and loving presence, and in my case too, I can't shake the image of Michael Flynn from John Ford's The Quiet Man, and he has that aura of that kind of endearing character also in this movie. And there's even a scene in which he gives William Holden the recipe of a hot rum toddy, a rum cocktail or concoction that I might surely need this winter. The part of the criminal went, in this case, to Lyle Badger, a relatively unfamiliar face I should say, but who's definitely scary here as a cold-blooded, solid villain. This is one of his first major screen parts, and he would then base his career mostly on TV. The part of his girlfriend went to an actress that I think is also very much overlooked, and that is Jan Sterling. She often played this kind of roles, those of crass dames, such as her part in Billy Wilder's Ace in the Hole, for instance. Her career waned too after the sudden death of her second husband, also actor Paul Douglas, and she also turned to TV. She is incredible in this movie in my opinion, and it feels almost that her part is a bit too brief. One of the great assets of this movie, and one of the things that I love the most about it, is the fact that it's one of those thrillers or movies in which the tension keeps building up and in which things are taking place against the clock. And as I said before, it all ends up in a climactic, super thrilling final chase that keeps you on the edge of your seats until the very end. A story that for me is again impeccably told by Rudolf Mattei, and that was in fact an adaptation yet again of a novel called Nightmare in Manhattan, written by Thomas Walsh. Walsh was a journalist turned to mystery and pulp fiction writer who published several times for the emblematic pulp magazine called The Black Mask. It was screenwriter Sidney Bohm who adapted that novel. The cinematography in this case, it was not by Rudolf Mattei, it was by Daniel L. Fapp, who spent most of his career at Paramount Studios. He worked a lot with Mitchell Leeson, who was a director predominantly known for his comedies, but he proved to be a very good asset in film noir movies such as Union Station or The Big Clock. A decade later, in the 60s, he would go on to win an Oscar for his cinematography in West Side Story. So you can count on the visuals of Union Station being quite amazing. Rudolf Mattei, as I said in the video dedicated to Gilda, was mostly known and acclaimed for his work precisely as a cinematographer, but as a director, he made one quite unusual film noir called DOA, today a cult classic, and also Union Station, which I quite prefer, if I'm honest, to DOA. So I think that I've given you, again, pretty solid reasons to give Union Station a chance, and I promise that it won't disappoint. Alright, that was all for today's video. I really hope that you enjoyed this one too. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for joining me in another video of this Film Noir challenge and for sharing the love as always for classic movies. Stay safe, take care, and see you tomorrow for another video. Bye!